Lama Dong Bon Jambe Yong La Sha Zo Lo Kangge Lo Zhe Dim Ni Den Nye Tra Nong Da Rab Sara Ve Chi Nye Dong Gun Chi Chen Se Shir Ni Je Tu Gra Le Bong Zen Kong Da Si Be Zun Ra Ma Re Min Tam Dung Re Chi Se Ve Ra Soi Kun La Pu Che Tar Se Yin La Tu Ju Yong Den Song Chödrak Chödrak Nyumon Nilong Le Che Cha Chon Chon Se Shin Re Men Sre Dung E Nyu Gu Che Nye Chen Se Ra Che Nam Dene Ta Chen Sa Chu Tar Sen Yen Ten Lu So Ja Se Tu Gu Chödrak Chödrak Chu Ni Jen Che Da Le Men Jambe Yong A Du Zedin Che Chen Ra Ve Sre Che Da Le Ten Mu Men Pa Rab Sra Ne Ka Dan Den Che Chang Lo Da Hua Ye Lo Zhe Pa Be Nong Wa Zal Du So Nam Da Zu Zhen Ser Je Sa Je Den Den Zhen Ba Me Ling Ge Ben Ze She Rab Nye De Nong Ye Che Gun Sar Tom Shon Drove Lama Shage Yuru She Ye Kala Chen Rave Chen Kura Je Zebe Don Durje Len La Po Jave Ten Bai Kene San Zebe Kai Ju Rinpo Che La Sha Je Wu Ring Kam Sa Ben Men Dur Da Be Se Re Ni Lam Je Lo Bru Che Ma Jong De Xin Gui Je Je Bu Der Zebe Yong Zen Lama Ju Bar Je La Du La Su Dene Ya Ta Ka Sang Ge Chue Ne Ma Shun De Nimpa Damga Ge Lu Ki Xie Pa Song Ge Ter Je.
Next, there is the section of the text which explains about the details of shamatha meditation in the context of the tradition of key instructions.
Ta teaching de Damga Ge Lu Te La Tene Nyam Ten Zong Nge Song Yong Tu Tene Ta Nyam Nga Song Ken De Song A Re.
And in terms of possible meditation experiences in consequence of having practiced properly, here we find a list of 5 such experiences.
Ti de Nyam Tong Bo Te Yuwa Tang Je Be Nyam Sing Ke Te Re.
So these experiences accompany the development of shamatha. And Dangpo de Sum kan det Sum
Yuwe Nyam. Yuwe Nyam Song De Dan Da Ra Wo De Kang Ko Go Ge Ar Se Na.
La so.
Ngan Zo Le Tang Bo Ba Shin Ne Ki Ting En Se Na Nyam Bar Jan Na Yong De Pe Na Tem Bo Zan Ni Yo Ma Re. Sem Ha Ma Le Jang Chen Ju Mang Song De Be Song De Chi Yong Ge Yo.
The first of these 5 meditation experiences is called mind in motion, which is about various levels of agitation, those of a lower level, a middling level and a higher level, as it were, of agitation. And the Risei Babshu Drapore Sungyo Marata. And to begin with, it's explained that when a practitioner starts out with practicing shamatha meditation, he may end up with the impression that his mind is more agitated while meditating than the mind was prior to making efforts in meditation. This is very common that practitioners, when starting to recognize just how agitated the mind is, the conclusion they draw is that the meditating mind, in terms of agitation, is at a higher level of agitation than previously.
Te penna cancer. Orzabu chiggen chudma papchona chud number 2 de son yore. Tene petena yin aran so le thangpo pe gamchon yon tu ngang mamale chang nam to mang song do sam madewa mangbo yong be yore te ngamala mang ro tap chan yo ma de te du nam to khar khandes yogi yo ba te ngarang ka ngoshi be yore te ya por nyam.
And the example given to illustrate this is the water falling from a high cliff. The water falls head-on rapidly downwards. And as was said, this is an example which illustrates the experience called mind in motion. And as was also said previously, the meditator to begin with may end up with the impression that his mindset is now at a higher level of agitation, higher than previously before he started making efforts in meditation. However, that's not at all the case. What has happened is simply that the practitioner starts to recognize just how agitated his mindset usually is. As he hasn't previously attempted to develop one-pointed attention, he has failed to recognize the level of constant agitation that is at hand in terms of his mindset. Now, because of his efforts in meditation, he recognizes what has been happening all the time. He becomes aware of just how agitated or what level of agitation is at hand in terms of his mindset. Then there, the second meditation experience in this list of 5 is called attaining.
Penna longba chik na me chutem bab ro gyo na chongrong da chik na ne chongrong sing de ta longba sik ya ro longba chik longba ku to po ta chik na me chutem bab ro gyo na kavre chutem number 2 gre kavre ya ku terwa sen ro gre petena shin tene ta result bab chum da ge get la yu ma ja wa chmu tu gon na tene top nyam de che yung gre song.
So what's attained, as it were, in terms of the second meditation experience? Well, what's attained is that in effect of the practitioner's efforts to develop shamatha, he's become able to experience some periods of a level of calm as to his mindset. And the simile used to illustrate this is that of a river flowing through a gorge. Now, a gorge is a very narrow area, and there is a lot of variation in the landscape as to the two sides of the gorge, which makes for that sometimes the river, the water flowing through the gorge, a river usually, flows more leisurely, and through other areas it is rushing through the gorge. So depending upon the shape of the landscape in the various areas, you get these variations. Similarly, the practitioner who has made some efforts successfully will, having done so, achieve a capacity to, for some periods, rest in a calm state, comparable to the river flowing leisurely through one area of the gorge. However, he will not yet have overcome agitation, and therefore there will also, while meditating, be periods of the session where the mind is agitated, comparable to areas of a gorge where the water of the river rushes through the gorge, as it were.
Dene kambenyam singedere ta kambenyam singede ta thobinyam tel jönsingne gamnang biyana dene shinede la kamyon de penna longban jambu non chuo chembo papdewa dawochi yungre sung.
The third meditation experience is called familiarized, and is said to be like a wide river flowing easily.
Tapena topen yamti gele yu masha jamu tu gamyon de tashinege mikbatala kamyon de kadu nyambar jana devo dawochi.
Here, in consequence of continuing the efforts, the practitioner has this experience in meditation called familiarized, which is about the practitioner being able to remain focused more or less throughout the meditation session. And being able to do so originates with the fact that the practitioner has now familiarized himself with the focus to the extent where he doesn't lose sight of it more or less. He is so familiar with the meditation, which of course involves both the meditating mind and the focus of the meditating mind. He's familiar with both to the point where interruptions are They do perhaps happen, but not to a great extent. There isn't a lot of agitation at hand.
Penna, Lomban the Zol Chashana, then you dress a pub do, Chabayam Mabab, long my jam and jumping, my pump door, nothing and Tinachin, Chen Rotwatch.
Now, the large river Danube flows throughout the city of Vienna. It flows through the city, I should say. Now, on a day where there is neither rain nor wind, the water of the river flows leisurely through the city. And this level of shamatha, which is about the third meditation experience called familiarized, is the one which can be illustrated by way of that example. The river Danube flowing leisurely, or its waters flowing leisurely throughout the city, because there is neither rain nor wind that would disturb or agitate the waters of the river.
Tene, what? Tanda Harisko.
She body. Tempo in Sargo.
Campeñam. That tempeñam singit.
Tempena.
Tempeñam singente. Tante fish songare. Penna tempeñam te Jatsola balab meben ekabravch. Tene Nanjo Pati Chanel do stingens and native gabla. Zan sim chugumare shepherd. That Korang turned Chusum Ki Nangiana, the Jiggy Nangiana, Dorna teasing the sim chugma shortwatch in the YouTube.
Then there is the fourth meditation experience called stable, which is illustrated by way of the example of the still ocean. And here the meditator has advanced to the point where during the meditation interruptions do not happen at all. In the same way as in the absence of rain, wind and the like, the surface of the ocean remains still. So here the meditator, while in meditation, doesn't experience agitation at all.
Tarsim binyam songare. Ngabati. Tarsim binyam singente. Jing kande chona yang. Dingen zintele yoa mepa. Netuba dingen salwa. Dingen tangbe kitendo netuba chilsegi. Penna sinne wudra dedra kase chona yang nanjor pate dingen zin nyambar jadu. Di kona dage de zan dingen zin yo to
Next, there is the fifth meditation experience called stable to the end, which is said to be Dadi Marmedrapore. Which is said to be like a butter lamp that is burning bright and clear, not flickering in the wind, no matter what the conditions are, here in terms of the mindset of the meditator, no matter what the conditions are, mind remains unmoved and clear. So whatever sounds are heard, for example, that will not make for an interruption. The meditator, in terms of his mindset, in the face of loud noises nearby, remains undisturbed, is able to maintain, in spite of the disturbance, that mindset, the mindset which remains unmoved and clear.
Tadi tarsimbe nyam jule je simbe ke nanjur pate pen zhongkong chi ke nan zukshan yang kong le zhongkong ke chorwa dunga ti yong ma de tingen zen ne de.
Now this is the level of what one may refer to as perfect shamatha, a perfect calm state. And the practitioner who has attained this level would, in spite of, for example, being imprisoned, not suffer in spite of perhaps otherwise painful experiences while imprisoned. For as long as he maintains a mindset that remains unmoved and clear, being able to do so, having perfected shamatha, disturbances, adverse circumstances, and so on would not affect him.
That's the Perna, Mamata, Pearl Chödrak la, Jamgön Kongtrül Lodrö Lama Gamchen Tende, Tenzo le Song Judoa, Dunge Kain Mendo Song. That's nothing in the room.
There are reports of lamas in the past who were imprisoned in Tibet in connection with communist China annexing Tibet. And they have reported that because of having achieved this level of shamatha, they didn't suffer while imprisoned.
Laso, Tate Peche Minga Luge Nyamga Singet Tinsat.
So these are the 5 experiences set forth in the tradition of key instructions. Now, when one speaks of the tradition of key instructions, one is pointing to the fact that this tradition emphasizes and incorporates to a great extent so-called key instructions, hence the name.
Teacher, Tandenzo Jewe Tula. Pena nyam rang re deyo re, nyam te nyam gela mashawa chene, mutu te nyam lin nang da, tene nyam tongpa le, nipa la yan ro, nipa na samba lan ro chene, tene tama shinegi tengen ze tar shimba sange de yungu yot.
So in terms of these experiences which accompany the development of shamatha, you have 5 types or 5 levels, however one wants to phrase it. And in terms of an individual practitioner, point made here in listing them is to show the need for progressing from the first level to the second and so on, meaning the practitioner shouldn't discontinue his efforts having achieved, for example, the third level. He needs to make efforts till he attains the fifth level, thus perfecting shamatha meditation.
Last that that's our subject somebody redo. Gambala tenne ndrupe tse.
We've now come to the third of the three principal sections of what concerns shamatha meditation. And it sets forth the measure of accomplishment of shamatha and its benefits. And here there are two subdivisions.
Tangbote Chinen Drippet Sulu Yila Chene Tada Tsemakande over Te Shekdo.
And the first of these two subdivisions is about Drupet Senma Chikpo Ergo Kandesum.
Chene Drippet Sulu Drippet Tse Damoson.
The first of the two subdivisions is about
Shinen Drippet Sul Yiji Tadan Jepa.
Nicharedua. Yichi Tadan Jepa Situ.
Yiji Ta Sevkabla Shinen Drupion Tu Yi La Dancing Dao Kandeji Yongu. Xinjiang Denzoredoa.
Daddy young Nyamson Jigredoa. Yichi Setu. Taden so Nyamsulempa po Gergi Sorvaredoa.
Yeah.
So the first of the two subdivisions is about the following: how shamatha is accomplished and the signs of successful practice. However, in terms of the signs of successful practice, one needs to know the following, which is implied by way of how this heading of this subdivision is phrased in the Tibetan. There is the word the mind, however, the word for a specific function of the mind at large, as it were, namely that of the intellect. In terms of its various workings. And what's concerned are those signs. The signs at hand are not signs perceptible to individuals other than the practitioner. These are signs manifesting within, and that therefore are experienced by the practitioner himself. So in terms of the words signs of success or successful practice, one has to be aware of that those signs are signs experienced and known by the practitioner himself.
Tene tatingen sin drupe gopa yipate.
And then there is the second subdivision, which talks about the purpose for accomplishing shamatha meditation, or for practicing and accomplishing shamatha meditation. Lasso?
당보테 신종 탈신 신낸 주파고 대설
신장 타르툭 송여나
신종 탈신
타르친
신낸 주파고
신년 타신 신년 주파. Yeah. So an indication, or the principal indication of having accomplished shamatha is when refinement, so-called refinement by training, sometimes referred to or translated as suppleness, reaches its end, meaning it has been brought to its highest level.
Tatiche yonde
Dema to sungyo marwa. Shinjan tarshin shine
drupo. So desal chenma meto kadang reis tate zasik tere.
Sumre shire.
Zasik tere. Zasik tere.
Kadangre.
Kadangre tagarangre.
Sumre doa.
Sumre dawchre do. Tat ndere do dewa salwa tatare. Sumre do.
The text then lists the signs of refinement by training reaches its end. This is indicated by way of primarily three signs experienced by the meditator. There are the experiences of bliss, brilliant vividness, and mind merging with space without conceptualization. Tene namka dan redi kuran peson de chik rava. Or
no did charge sarva.
Okay.
Laso tatile tangbotere sholoka tangbote ganse chik tangbote shinjong tarshin said.
So these three signs are what indicate that the practitioner has accomplished shamatha. He has brought so-called refinement by training to its end.
Lüdang semla shinjong de matopna 가정 공동체에 이시에 예상 semne 골라서봐 줌나양 다동신내 탈신 요 말에 송제.
The point made here is that a practitioner who has achieved the four mental engagements in the context of the 9 levels of shamatha explained yesterday, if that practitioner hasn't also attained or hasn't also accomplished refinement by training to its highest level, then shamatha isn't yet perfect. And the size of shamatha having reached its highest level is the experiences of bliss, brilliant vividness, and mind merging with space without conceptualization.
Tan de la lungren che tonare. Sanje ge gongba ngender gendoi lungji.
There is a sutra called the sutra that elucidates the meaning, and in this sutra one finds, or the author has extracted a quotation from that sutra in order to clarify what we just talked about, or what Khenpo Rinpoche just explained to us.
Tan do ti nang la karsong arsana penna chongchup samba chige kan nang la korne yishe yedang yishe yi gone semne gubatan rup deba yina yang tadang shine ngoji de mare songar.
Di champegi kandishu yusarwa.
Yeah.
The quotation reads as follows, the beginning of it reads as follows: Lord Buddha, Maitreya asked, or Maitreya addressed the Buddha, and then asked, when a bodhisattva is able to remain attentive and rest mind in mind, but lacks the thorough refinement of body and mind that comes as a result of training, what is that mental state called? Now, Khenpo Rinpoche explains that the level of shamatha Maitreya refers to here is the 9th level. A practitioner having achieved the 9th level of shamatha in consequence of the 4 mental engagements. So a practitioner who has achieved that level but who lacks thorough refinement of body and mind that comes as a result of training, what would that mental state be called? Or how would one name that mental state? Maitreya asks Lord Buddha.
Tene sanje gitila ling karasong arsana semne gubatan rup deva shine ngö mare shine jintun pare songat.
The Buddha answers, and the sutra reads as follows: Maitreya, this is not shamatha, but a likeness of shamatha.
Na tan denso la tenne
de mingde song he
ya jintun pa
re tene digi yigi drotang te mingde kan det sig tanang som
Tumba.
yi chi Kongtrül
Möpatang Songbar Demba Yimbe Jebra Shaus. Riji Kanda.
Jamgön Day Chanshu Sampatisitu. Sem la mik bay sem nang tu ji la ji pana lu shin tu Jamgön Zam Shin Shuma. Topa Ma topa marabi.
Matopare.
Ma topa de bartu yi la ji pa de la chi shish ji digi bartu rava.
Chishi Ji, Sampa, son lint terroa.
Yeah.
Sambe Kanta de Yashuroa. Sampa, Shine Mainte, Shine Jis Tempe, Möpatang Songbar Demba Yimbe Jebra Shao, Sondo.
Yeah.
Sampa, son.
Yi che reve. Yi che pa. De semjung de karese geore. Ming
Dire doa,
ming nang ma soma.
Shinjong Matopa, Katsang Xie Songa, Semne Gu, Ti Ye Gon, Drup Gogueva, Yila Sepa Guigon, Ye Gon. Ti Drup Deva Tela, Takarse Gore, Scand shoot.
Re de la ming kareta gore kandishura.
Ti Tanda the Kandich stai. Ti Tanda de Shambala Makan Angrova.
Okay.
Shambas, Ti Shine Ngoma Maredas. Shine the Jes Tempares.
La re dinge shutsa.
Oh,
Digi je la ka yomaro.
Yomar Tagarana.
Okay.
Tanderella. Gombang Yepander Windows again there. Teaching and do the Gacha Rela. De Sanjay from a Shonchip Samba, Juga Kandashune, Linjo and Devachire.
Now
Din on the Shamba Chigre.
the sutra quoted is one of the most important ones in Mahayana Buddhism, and it's made up of various questions asked by 10 well-known bodhisattvas and the Buddha's answers to those questions.
Oh,
And
Tante.
here then it's the Bodhisattva Maitreya who is asking the Buddha about what or how one would refer to the 9th level of Shamatha meditation, accomplished primarily on the basis of the 4th of the 4 mental engagements, if that level of Shamatha is proper Shamatha or not. And as we saw, the Buddha pointed out that this level is a likeness of Shamatha.
Tati Shugate Deben Longdinche Tondo the Tandachik Pachik
Do the Gengi.
Do the Jengilondre. That machine and Rixar Tandachik Parwa.
Yeah. This is followed by another quotation from the Sutra Alankara, which is about the same. Khenpo Rinpoche says we do not need to go into the details of that quotation because word-wise, more or less, and meaning-wise, it amounts to the same as the previous quotation. Lasse?
Oriento. Tawana Dode Jengi Tsik Tamatiga Tanda and the Jigson is Saturday. Yila
Tsik Tama de Kavado.
Derendo.
Det är så här som dålig igen, va? Kan jag gå så gå in till land?
Oriento.
Det är shit, tänker
Derendo.
Lydansen. Det är lydansen. Shintukyanka.
Yila Shep. Yila Shedan Jesse Sahas.
Mingdang maso.
Yeah.
Just, I have to find it. Det kan det till kogen då gilla köpa.
Gilla köpa så det då.
Där det sagupa ergo.
Ja kam dirtinkes.
La?
Tanda sineg gamram ka de she de ju yije ji yorwa.
Ja.
Semne godon yije jesingej.
Yicheshi.
Ja. Ne kap shinere ma to tartu shinede mare sonne koye isar.
So here, in terms of one segment of the quotation from the Sutra Alankara, the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, the Buddha says the following. That the level of shamatha found or in conjunction with the 9th level of shamatha achieved by way of the 4th of the 4 mental engagements this is, the Buddha apparently answers, a type of temporary shamatha. Nekap de la kandishiko.
That nekap to get wounded yoga. That the conditions the nekap de.
So what does temporary mean here, or dytsilla typa erikote?
Mare gamking sembla do ande. Penandire do a. Sinenguchi gi semte lutan sem.
Sinenguchi gi sen tanda de Xinjiang dang den pa erikote.
Ja, Xinjiang drup de bat.
Det säger det man då.
Det är seung då.
Alltså.
Dorsu dysanas. Sinenguchi semte Lu läsron vi Xinjiang tang, sem läsron vi Xinjiang till hegiores.
Actual shamatha, it is explained, is shamatha which incorporates thorough refinement through training, both in connection with the body and the mind. What does this mean? Well, it means that if the physical body is refined through training, in the context of shamatha, that's a reference to that the physical body is no longer rigid. Penada gongyabdu korang di barche sonjik regimindo
Which means
that physical pains of various levels and so on while meditating no longer happen, because the body, by way of the impact of this achievement, that of actual shamatha, is refined to the point where the meditator can use it in any way without being hindered by possible physical pain and the like. And the same applies to the mindset of the meditator. The mindset of the meditator has at this point been refined through the training to the extent where impediments there are also not at hand.
Pen semne guban rupsung weke semji yorwa genetic te desem tsechik pate dekam sem ran re de yore chebare.
You see, in terms of the 9th level of shamatha, the mindset there is that of the highest level of one-pointed attention possible in the desire realm. Did you Xinjiang mere?
Xinjiang ruptubiyoma tadong.
And at that level, the meditator hasn't yet achieved thorough refinement through training in its two perspectives, the perspective of the physical body and that of the mindset.
Perna hine gam manyong king michige semla teno desem tsechik bate hine re de yor.
La.
Hine tsan gam manyong wege michige semla tena.
Well, teni karere shiningomare.
Ko hine re.
You see, depends on the perspective, what you compare with. Now, the mindset of someone of just the 9th level of shamatha, who has not yet achieved thorough refinement through training, if you compare his mindset to the mindset of a person who hasn't meditated at all, well, then you would refer to that mindset as a mindset of thorough calm, as it were.
Xinjiang drup sarve gongsa chikye sem tena teni ande sem tsechik bate hine ngoji re yomare.
So, in that context, one could speak of that mindset as actual shamatha, but not in the context of comparing the 9th level mindset to the mindset of someone who has achieved that and thorough refinement through training.
Ta ona Xinjiang drup sarve ke Tongbo sem Xinjiang drup sarve nanjur page semte dekam pege semte re yomare.
You see, the mindset of a person who has achieved the 9th level of shamatha and thorough refinement through training is the mindset of a higher realm. It's not the mindset of the desire realm. Or it's no longer the mindset of the desire realm, rather.
Lu Xinjiang drup sarve nanjur patege lu te yang kam kongma de lu rabu chadar.
And the body is refined to the point where, in terms of composition, workings, and so on, it corresponds to the body of a higher realm, and how the physical body there works, what it's composed of, and so on.
Penna sem Shinjung Dru Thaye Nanjur Patela Nyomu Nganjur Zani Yungyo.
And the practitioner who has achieved thorough refinement through training with respect to the mindset as well is a person who will not manifest afflictive obscuring states. However, that doesn't mean the individual has achieved a realization of no self and thus uprooted the afflictive obscuring states. For the period of the time that this mindset is at hand, in effect of thorough refinement through training, afflictive obscuring states won't manifest. That's all. It's not about those states being uprooted yet.
Shinjung Drup Sarve Gongsa Tenzo Shinjung Drup Gongsa Tenzo Dekam Betin Jinji Yin Yang Lu Dang Simbin Nekab De Kam Kumen Nekab Rao Re Sadu Tene Dekam De Samadang Denzol Shira Tengo Bio.
So a person or a practitioner of the desire realm who has achieved this, both the 9th level of Shamatha meditation and thorough refinement through training in both its perspectives, even though that practitioner still lives in the desire realm, both his body and his mind are the body and the mind of a higher existence. That's the level of refinement achieved, as it were.
Lasso, Tringet some Tejagi, Tene, Tin, Chen, Bear, Tene, Kazan to Song, Chua Yuena, Yinji Minietua, Norona, Ten Sani, Tivet to certain Ling Pubi.
So that's all for today's session. Khenpo Rinpoche says, in terms of what he has explained till now, please think that over, and you're more than welcome to ask questions where you have questions.
They where they Shinjung Korte, Sanning Shugi, they Tandunga Pelotos Jabosat.
Khenpo Rinpoche will tomorrow give some additional explanations about this state called thorough refinement through training. And he says he would like to consult yet another few scriptures and do some more research as to this level called thorough refinement through training, and that's the reason why he ends here today.
Tene Kazan Shine Katula Chapel Mikba Singete Shira Sundr getting and said Ravajre, there's a thing as Sani, Trevek up to the Shiptra Chenshu.
Sheila Songjuk on the cheek. You see, in terms of one of the prior points, rather at the beginnings of the text, in terms of Shamatha meditation, there is what is called pervasive objects in terms of possible objects of focus. And in terms of this category, what one needs to understand is that shamatha here, in the context of these specific objects, incorporates to some extent vipassana meditation.
Kainsan di mikpate kochila chabe mikpare mato mikpa sherabaj marwa. Pena ul tembe mi hine gamchu ina mikpa sherabarwa. U ran to sherwa.
Yeah.
This is a tamshela mikgodu.
You see, this category of objects of focus is referred to as, well, perhaps one should name this category objects of all kinds, objects that are found anywhere throughout existence. It's not the objects, well, to some extent, but the main point isn't that a given object is a pervasive object, except for in terms of that object being an object that can be found anywhere throughout existence. So it's a category of objects that incorporate anything, all objects that exist and are known, as it were. Now, in terms of specific, so it's a category of objects at large, general objects, whereas in terms of most other objects, as to shamatha meditation, the object is a specific one, such as, for example, the coming and going of the breath. Here you have a single object focused upon for the sake of developing one-pointed attention. Whereas in the category of objects at large, as it were, the perspective is not entirely the same. Of course, the main purpose is that of developing one-pointed attention. However, the method involves to some extent vipassana meditation as well.
Lasso Sunam de damje zegane thamne nyepe danam pamjet jega na je bala chubai sigbe cholen rowa shu